Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Solid State PLC results presentation. For newcomers to Solid State, can I possibly point you to the introductory video and research portal on the Solid State Group website, as well as the appendices to this presentation, which you'll be able to revisit after this session. That'll give you a good feel for products and markets. Before we begin, we would like to submit the following poll, which you'll see on your screens. Throughout this presentation, investors will be in listen-only mode. However, questions are encouraged and can be submitted at any time via the Q&A tab situated on the right-hand corner of your screen, or if anyone has dialed in via solidstate@walbrookpr.com. The company may not be able to answer every question it receives during the presentation. However, the company will review all questions submitted today and publish responses where appropriate. These will be available via your Investor Meet Company dashboard. Finally, we would like to remind you that this presentation is being recorded. I would now like to hand you over to Chief Executive Gary Marsh, Chief Financial Officer Peter James, and John McMichael, Managing Director of the Components Division. Gary.
Thank you, Tom. So I'd like to welcome you all to this, our ninth Investor Meet Company presentation. I hope you find it informative, and we're really looking forward to taking any of your questions at the end of the slide deck. We've said for several years now, our diversity gives the group resilience, and I think this is ably demonstrated in this set of numbers. The last few years haven't been an easy period to be in business. Our experienced management team have navigated us through Brexit, COVID-19, and the resultant semiconductor shortages, and we now have inflation and increasing interest rates to contend with. But despite this challenging environment, we've achieved consistent growth over the last 4 years. Our strategy is simple and has been consistently executed over this period, and we do not intend changing it. The additional resources now available to the group will enable us to increase focus on all 4 pillars of our strategy, which we'll be covering in more detail later in the presentation. Our key P&L metrics have grown through a combination of organic and acquisitive growth. Return on capital employed, you can see, has fallen a little as a result of M&A activity right at the end of 2021, with the Willow Technologies and Active Silicon joining the group. However, this began to rebound in 2023 despite the acquisition and fundraise for Custom Power. Finally, on net debt, pleasingly, this has started to fall in the second half. And again, we'll cover this in a bit more detail in the financial review that Pete will be carrying out shortly. So taking revenue by geography, we've increased international sales to 43% of the total. 5 years ago, this stood at just 20%. We focus on high growth markets where our technology and engineering expertise is recognised and valued. Our target markets of industrial, security and defence, medical and transport are ones with high barriers to entry, often requiring accreditations, and typically with high levels of government funding, and as such, gives the company real strength during tough economic times. Whilst we're seeing very strong demand from the defence sector at present, it wasn't that long ago when COVID struck that the medical sector was growing extremely rapidly. By targeting multiple growth markets, it helps to ensure we are as resilient as we can be. People and ESG are at the core of the business and our strategy. We've been working hard to improve our communication of this, both internally and externally. We have a couple of slides later in the presentation which will expand on this. We've highlighted here 3 important non-financial metrics. And on diversity, particularly at board level, we recognise there's work to do. We expect to announce some good progress on this in the coming weeks. The group's family culture rewards us with high employee retention and is a key strength of the group and something we're all very proud of. Lastly, taking lost time incidents, quality and safety are of paramount importance to our customers. They demand high quality products delivered through high quality processes, with health and safety at the heart of this. Pleasingly, there have been no occurrences this year. We have a long-term blue chip customer base supplying our trusted technology for their demanding applications. Many of them operate globally, so a large part of our business is fueled by international demand. To give you an idea of the range of markets we serve, we supply industrial computers to the BBC, train ticketing machines to Atos and Fujitsu. Renishaw is an example of a component customer that came to us because of our value-added services. They are both a component and a systems client, with Philips Medical, 3M, and Lockheed Martin utilising our battery packs in their products. The benefits of scale are starting to pay dividends, supplying more products to our tier 1 customers, so improving organic growth. That said, we see significant potential for further growth here across all of the business units as we broaden our complementary product and technology profile. We embarked on a revised strategy in FY 18-19. So what have we achieved in the last 4 years? Significant growth in revenue and profits by successfully executing on this strategy. Improving operating margins by more than 250 basis points, a 30% improvement, with adjusted EPS reflecting more than 20% compound annual growth over the last 4 years. As you can see, over this time frame, we've delivered significant growth in total shareholder return through a combination of organic growth and strategic bolt-on M&A. We now set out our ambitions to 2030 to become an international leader of sustainably engineered components and systems, continuing to innovate, providing customers with our trusted technology for their demanding applications. Through the further development of complementary technologies and own brand products, we aspire to achieve 12% operating margins. And most importantly, maintain our track record of delivering greater than 20% compound annual growth in total shareholder return.
Thanks, Gary.
I'll hand you over to Pete.
Thanks, Gary. If I pick up the baton with some of the key financial metrics, and as Gary said, we've delivered strong improvement in all our key financial metrics. And in terms of, if I start at the top there, the open order book, we've seen strong billings in Q1 benefiting from that open order book. If we look forward to the revenue, we've seen very strong revenue growth year on year, and there's a little more detail on a later slide, but the key drivers are Custom Power, first year of the benefit of that acquisition, organic growth across both divisions, and a foreign currency tailwind. Coming down to operating margins, we're starting to see the benefit of the operational gearing, as Gary said, and the operating margin percentage is up 50 basis points on a group basis. Coming down again to PBT, that's up 50%. That's a mix of organic and M&A. The organic piece is about 30% and the M&A is about 20%. In terms of dividend, we've paid a dividend every year that we've been on AIM, and we're continuing with our progressive dividend policy, and that's up 3%. And finally, if we look down to the bottom there, net debt, compared to the half year, net debt was 16.1 million at half year. That's come down £8 million in the second half, and we've seen really positive, strong cash generation in H2. So looking at the revenue in a little more detail, you can see there we've seen strong revenue growth in both systems and components, 17% organic growth in systems, 19% in components. There's then the impact of Custom Power, 8 months worth of Custom Power revenue at just over £16.5 million. And then there's the FX tailwind. We naturally hedge our US dollar purchases, matching our US dollar purchases with US dollar sales. And that's meant we've had an FX tailwind at a revenue level, albeit it does present a headwind at a margin percentage level. The absolute margin is protected, but the margin percentage obviously sees a headwind. So moving on to our operating margins. Again, similar theme here. Systems division and components division seeing good progress. Increase of about 32% in the systems division, up to £8 million. Components are up 30% to £5.8 million. There's the impact of adding the Custom Power profit for the period, which is just shy of £1.5 million. And then there's the increment of group overheads, which are up about 5%, £100,000 to 2.1 million. Moving on to cash, what we see here in terms of cash is three main buckets of cash. So the cash profit for the year of 9.4 million, that reflects very strong cash generation in the second half of 8.8 million, which is 145% cash conversion in the second half. Acquisition-related cash flows, which is the three big bars in the middle. So we've got the equity fundraise, which we did last summer, the increase in debt to fund the acquisition, and then we've got the cash payments. Within those, that 33.3 million of acquisition payments, there's the initial consideration for Custom Power, the first tranche of deferred consideration, $5 million that was paid in February, the first tranche of Active Silicon's earn-out payment, and the final payment for Willow Technologies. I'll come on to the outstanding deferred consideration on the balance sheet. The other big items here, dividend and capex, which are just over 2.2 million respectively. So moving on to the balance sheet, in terms of net debt there, you can see just above the net debt number, the deferred contingent consideration of 5.7 million that's included within that. That is made up of $5 million, £4 million related to Custom Power, and 1.7 million, which is the final deferred consideration in relation to Active Silicon. Those payments will be made in the first half of this financial year. If we go back up to the working capital, which is probably the other big area that jumps off the page, you can see inventories are significantly up year on year, and there's a couple of key drivers to that. So firstly, there is an increase of about 1.5 million of customer purchase stock. The other side of that entry is within contract liabilities. That's deferred income, where customers have prepaid to secure products. So we've bought the stock and we've got deferred income. That's about 1.5 million. There's the first time of having Custom Power stock on the balance sheet. That's about £3.5 million. And we had £4.5 million of NATO stock arrive just before year end. That stock is going to ship in the first half of this financial year, and underpins our strong start to the year that we've just started. So the underlying inventory that's increased is about £6 million, and that's balanced against an order book which is up 35 million year on year. So yeah, really critical that we have that inventory to support our H1 sales. Finally, on this slide, we've extended or got committed from, or uncommitted, but agreed, authorised with Lloyds, an overdraft of $10 million. And that provides us comfort in terms of that working capital demand for NATO. We don't anticipate needing to use it. We don't get charged unless we use it. But if there is a need, we've got that additional headroom in facilities through the first half of this financial year. So moving on to the net assets. Net assets have changed quite a bit year on year. The really two big drivers in here, which is the share issue from last summer and the retained profit from this financial year. And offsetting that is the dividend payments. We are seeing more foreign exchange translation impact, having completed the acquisition of Custom Power, which gives us a bigger US dollar asset base. I'll hand over to John.
Thanks, Peter. So I'm just going to look at our structure and try and give some flavour to that for you. So the group is split into two operating divisions, systems and components, as you can see in the slide. I'll explain the two divisions later, but suffice to say that these are highly complementary. Our structure is such that we've got good resilience and diversity without losing the focus on our core competencies. And our core competencies really being solving customers' problems in a way that allows them to innovate. And this often requires solutions for harsh or challenging environments where the group has extensive know-how and experience. However, critical to everything that we do is our workforce, and we benefit from having a very stable, highly skilled and loyal resource. A great deal of time, money and effort is spent ensuring that we hire the best, we train and motivate the teams to be the best, and we really ensure that our leadership teams have the flexibility to operate at the highest levels. So with over 400 employees now in 14 locations across multiple countries, our focus on employee well-being continues to evolve, with ever better benefits and support packages being put in place year on year. And work is currently underway in simplifying the structure with the merger of Willow and Solid State Supplies in the UK and the merger of Pacer and AEC in the USA to give us the benefit of scale, better resource utilisation and greater efficiencies. Each side of the business complements the other. And the best way I can explain this is that components get advance warning of changes in the supply chain that are fed through to our systems business. So a classic example of that is the recent shortages, where the component side of the business, because of its close relationship with the semiconductor suppliers, was able to get ahead of the curve and start bringing in stock at the same time notifying our systems business so that they could get ahead of the curve, bring in stock and ensure that their production continued. Flipping that around, the systems business gets advanced access to new designs whilst they're still at the architecture stage. And that allows the engineers on the component side of the business to get in early to those customers and get our products designed in ahead of the competition. The two divisions are often working together, and the most common area for that would be batteries. For example, where the components business development team are working with a customer who also has a battery pack requirement. And that gives each side of the business much greater reach and access to solutions that would not otherwise be available. If we look in a little more detail at the systems division, we can see that they've had a fantastic year. Record order intake has resulted in the division closing the year with a record open order book, and that's supported by the NATO contract wins. These wins, however, will provide really transformational opportunity to increase the installed base of the product and then secure increased recurring revenues, for example, for training and system support, maintenance, replacement. Our strategic focus on developing our relationships with customers, where our systems expertise is valued and recognised, has really been critical in the successes that we've seen this year. And we've worked really hard to target the multi-year recurring revenues, where there really are opportunities to bid on through life support, for example. And critical examples of that would be the work that we're doing with BAE and with Transport for London. We've made a number of investments in our UK power facility, as well as our technical and engineering resources with a joint venture, eTech, in the north of England. That's brought us significantly increased development opportunities and expertise, particularly into the battery side of the business and in terms of power switching on the component side. And this, along with the custom power acquisition, has provided an exciting platform for the group to take a differentiated offering to the market. Moving to the components division, again, FY 2023 was an excellent year with record revenues and PBT, achieved really through the increased stocking of hard-to-find components, partnering with customers to make sure that we had the right stock in place at the right time. The division splits broadly into three areas: franchise distribution, which itself consists of electronic components and modules, optoelectronic components, and electromechanical components. The consistent theme is that all of these require a high level of technical understanding of the product and the customer's application in order to assist the customer in designing in the products. The second area is that of the value-added services, which includes sourcing and obsolescence. This lies outside of the franchise business and increases the company's value to its customer base by effectively rescuing them when production is under threat from missing or hard-to-find components. It's a specialist area and it requires a high degree of diligence and know-how. Our value-added services extend to incorporate device programming and firmware control and many other services that really allow our customers to put the devices that we sell straight onto their production lines without any need for pre-production processes. And then the third area is that of manufacturing of our own brand devices. And this is an area which commands higher margins for us, gives a greater level of protection in the marketplace. The Duracool brand is a prime example of this, and our Weymouth manufacturing facility is expanding its capabilities and widening the range of devices manufactured there. Just looking very briefly at our offering in key markets, I won't spend too much time going through these applications, save to say that the group approach allows us to attack nearly all aspects of these markets. So when we talk about medical, you can see it's not a single market, it's multiple opportunities with a market, and you can see the same on the rail transport side as well. So we have the opportunity to enter these markets at multiple touch points. So just looking at how we differentiate, our combination of the two divisions gives us that specialist industry and market knowledge, which supports our product knowledge and technical expertise. And this, combined with our strong supply chain relationships, really forms the foundation of our know-how. And we serve the customer by building trusted, long-standing relationships. We work with them to solve their technology challenges. We use this phrase of turning ideas into plans and plans into products and systems. But what we really do is we link up the electronics community in that quest for innovation. In short, we really facilitate our customers' innovation. And just moving on to look at some of the more exciting new opportunities that we're seeing in new markets. The group actively targets high growth, financially supported markets. And this means that the group is able to offer multiple entry points to the same markets with multiple product offerings. That makes the group more valuable to the customer, and it allows the group to rapidly become application experts in the chosen field. In UAVs, the group's able to offer the specialist capability of battery solutions, particularly for the electric unmanned aerial vehicle applications, whilst at the same time bringing our existing products, such as leading edge cameras and vision and sensing technologies, to the customer. Or it could be our communications products and GPS and antenna solutions. And these really allow the group to enter that UAV market anywhere from the ground itself right up to the aircraft in the sky. Our EV and EV infrastructure offering, if you're looking to the right of the slide now, has been greatly strengthened with the acquisition of Willow Technologies. And that's taken us into the high value energy switching arena with contactors and relays. So our existing products cover the displays and the processing and control and specialist communications and even the IoT networking of the chargers. But our power capabilities now extend into automotive relays, load switching, pre-charge switching. And we really focus here on non-road mobile machinery, whether that's in light plant, it could be a tree shredder or a mining vehicle or a cement mixer, but we're not active in that highly commoditized market that you would find General Motors and Ford and so on in. Our ability to link up the electronics community is really what allows us to bring in specialist design consultants when the customer needs them, or specialist manufacturers at the other end when they need them. And all of this really speeds our customers' time to market and increases our value to the customer. Thank you.
Thanks, John. So in terms of our progress on ESG, this year we formed a committee, an ESG committee, which I chair, which is an integral part of what we do and how we do it. What we actually found when we looked at that was we're actually very strong in this regard. However, there is an awful lot of work for us to do in improving how we communicate, both internally and externally, as Gary alluded to in the opening slides. We found that actually we're ahead of many of our larger customers and suppliers on embedding it. And in reality, what we identified is the ESG principles are just about doing good business the right way. So in starting to move this forward, we did what I think a lot of companies have done, and we've aligned our ESG goals with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And we've identified 7 that are particularly relevant to us and relevant to our teams. So starting on the left there, in terms of supporting local communities, We do a huge amount as an organisation, and particularly our people and our teams. You may have seen, some of you, that we've done a 1,000,000-step walk, getting all of our colleagues to do individual steps, and as a group we managed to accumulate 1,000,000 steps. And that was a really fun event and brought the group together and raised money for local charities. We also sponsor accommodation at a local YMCA and support local food banks. In terms of our employees, as John talked to a moment ago, we invest very heavily in our employees, and health and safety is absolutely at the heart of what we do, and quality. So creating a positive, collaborative workplace is key, where employees are encouraged to speak up and drive best practice. We've created an employee work group. We embraced flexible working. I think COVID helped all companies realise how we could be more flexible in working with our employees, and we've certainly looked to take the good that have come out of that and really optimise that for our teams. And as Gary said, in terms of promoting equality and diversity, there's some work to do at a board level, but hopefully there's some really good news to come on that in the coming weeks. In terms of, I'm going to skip the middle one, but in terms of sort of 9 and 12 here, our products are long life products. They're made to last. They're not throwaway products. And as a result, actually, an awful lot of what we do is well aligned with the environmental objectives. When I talked to one of our institutional holders, they talked about thinking about secondary benefits. And actually, technology, and particularly our technology, has an awful lot of secondary benefits to our customers. So, where we supply battery packs for pipeline inspection, they can really help our customers improve their yields, their throughputs, which actually enhances their own ESG agenda. So, adoption of technology is often about improving efficiency, reducing waste, and improving performance. So, an awful lot of what we do is very well aligned with sustainable innovation. And we're looking to optimize that as we go forward. In terms of our own climate change metrics, we've seen some really significant improvements, with scope 1 and 2 emissions down 48% since our reference year of 2020, which was our base year. And in terms of our intensity ratio, that's continuing to come down, and that's a relative measure relative to our gross profit. We do recognise, though, that scope 3 is really critical. So that relates to where we import goods, and we're looking to work with our customers and our suppliers to try and transfer more of the goods we buy in from air freight to sea freight, because that's a 20x improvement in CO2 if we move things to sea freight. Last but no means least is the middle one there in terms of economic growth. We firmly believe that by embracing this and leading on this, we can gain a competitive advantage. We can work in partnership with our stakeholders, customers, suppliers, staff and community to really add value in this area, and that will deliver growth and opportunities for all of our stakeholders.
Thank you, Pete. Here you can see the 4 pillars of our strategy. We've made very good progress on talent development this year, investing in the senior leadership team as we position ourselves for further growth. Highlights include the appointment of a group HR director, a senior M&A and investor relations analyst, additional engineering resource in our power business unit, a new commercial manager to lead Duracell, our range of own brand components that John mentioned earlier. And we're also well advanced in the recruitment of a group IT director and appointment of a new non-executive director. Turning to the second pillar of our strategy, in partnership with Silicon Labs, a long-standing component franchise, they're developing new products to meet our requirements for metering in the utility sector. Some data-driven analysis that we've done has shown that only 11% of the total customer base buys both Willow and SSS products. Early successes in introducing customers to the expanded product line have resulted in new design wins, namely Teledyne relays into solid-state supplies, defence at the customer base, for example. Post-year end, integration of the business systems is now allowing tracking of new projects and greater visibility of product gaps. On internationalisation, the passing of the Inflation Reduction Act provides good long-term opportunities where we expect to see significant US government investment of some $369 billion into green tech over the longer term, which is well aligned to our technology offering. We have refocused our US component sales channel, establishing a rep network across all 50 states and appointing a senior level business development director and a commercial manager. This gives us a coordinated and driven foundation on which we can build to execute our 2030 plan. Within our US components operation, we're in the process of merging the businesses and promoting a key individual to drive it forward. Finally, we've made concerted efforts to progress our marketing of the group this year, such as the Jericho website, and as I'm sure you will see the annual report, more on branding to come. So why and how do we do M&A? Our stated strategy, and it has been for many years now, is to combine organic growth with acquisitions. And we've now made 13 in the last 21 years. When looking at how we deploy capital, I'll give you a recent example in our power business, where we considered a greenfield investment in the USA, but opted instead to acquire an established business in Southern California. Conversely, in the UK, we've recruited 5 engineers to a joint venture, E-Tech Developments in Newcastle that John mentioned earlier. We're very selective, some might even say fussy. We researched 47 businesses in the US before we decided to progress with Custom Power. Looking at our M&A selection criteria that you can see there, targets must be clearly aligned with our strategy, further internationalizing the group or bringing complementary products or strengthening our own brand product portfolio. When assessing a business, cultural fit is very important and is often an area that I believe is overlooked. Acquisitions that can help accelerate organic growth are a key selection criteria. Imaging products from active silicon combined with our computing portfolio and electromechanical components from Willow Technologies with our semiconductors are both recent examples where we've achieved this. Lastly, turning to opportunities, we've set out here on the bottom right of the slide where we see M&A providing an attractive route to accelerating strategic progress. With a strong list of potential targets, however, there needs to be a willing buyer, willing seller dynamic. In the appendices, we've included our M&A history showing the deals we've done to date, several of which took 5 years from first contact to completion. I'll now hand over to John.
I thought it prudent to give you a little more colour on the Custom Power business out in California. The left-hand side there sets out the strategy and the alignment of Custom Power to the strategy that Gary mentioned earlier. I won't work through that. It's easy to see how each of those alignment pieces fits with the strategy. I also ought to say that normally Matthew Richards will be presenting this, as it falls under the systems side of the business, but he's actually out in California as we speak. So I'll do my best to deputise for him. The fundamental issue is that pleasingly, really pleasingly, Custom Power is achieving in line with expectations. The performance has been good. We have previously reported that they won't hit the stretch earn out. That was set as a hurdle. It was a hurdle that was difficult to achieve, and it means that we won't be liable for the additional payment. But the fundamental message is that Custom Power is behaving well and performing in line. The international customer base, if we turn to those the details on the right-hand side there, really wanted us to have partner with them so that we could support their efforts both in the United States and here in Europe. And that's exactly what we set out to do when we bought Custom Power. We've done all the soft integration, as we would call it, which is introducing the various sales teams to each other, looking at each other's customer base, making sure we understand each other's products and application areas, without significantly passing technical data between the two businesses. And the reason I say that is because we are a very prudent organisation. And whilst we believe that all of the devices manufactured by Custom Power are covered under the export license of EAR 99, which is a general license and allows you to export without applying for specific licenses. We determined for ourselves that we would better if we got clearance from the Bureau of Export Administration, just to make sure that we are free to transfer technical data into the UK. And the reason for doing that is simply because some of the customers of Custom Power are people like Lockheed Martin, and they're prime contractors to the American Department of Defense. So our usual prudent approach, but nothing that we're anticipating getting in the way of the business. In fact, we're looking forward to being able to transfer those technologies across and use the similar applications in both countries and indeed worldwide. We've added significant engineering talent, both in the US and the UK, and that's really positioning the group to have an offering which is differentiated with technology solutions that meet our customers' demanding applications. And that may be in drones, but it could equally be in medical devices or industrial applications such as emergency lighting. The focus, consistent with the group, is on markets where the engineering expertise provides a differentiated offering that's valued. As we saw on the previous slides, UAVs and medical and industrial wireless products provide really significant growth opportunities. Also, as we noted earlier, we've got a fantastic blue chip customer base where we're working hard to provide cross-group referrals and introductions so that we can grow our revenue with our top tier customers. And critically important is our relationship with the tier one cell providers. Those are the people that provide the devices that go inside the battery packs, the cells themselves. And this relationship really positions the group to be able to engineer solutions that our competitors can't deliver. Cell lead times do continue to be a challenge, particularly with the demand from the mass market EV and the consumer goods soaking up supply. However, our long-standing relationships are really underpinning our ability to secure product, albeit sometimes on a long lead time, and create a barrier to entry for other potential competitors. So really these synergies are creating an environment that will allow us and our power activities to provide strong midterm organic growth for the group. And that's particularly important as we're striving to achieve our goals of delivering better than 20% compound annual growth in the shareholder return. Thank you.
Thank you, John. So we'll just sum up here. We've had a very strong start to Q1 with demand supported by delivery of the NATO contracts that we announced in November last year. We've seen the benefit of operational gearing coming through in 2023, with operating margins increasing to over 9% in the period. As we look to our next strategic goal of 2030, we'll be striving to deliver on our ambition to achieve operating margins of 12%. As you'll have seen, our open order book combined with a strong Q1 has given us the confidence to upgrade expectations for 2023-24, where we expect to see year-on-year revenue growth of over 15% and adjusted PBT growth of circa 10%. Diversity is our strength, and we continue to see strong demand from security and defence, medical and transport sectors, albeit as lead times begin to normalise and our order book converts into sales, we anticipate some burn off in open order book, returning us to a more typical 12-month scheduling pattern. We've outlined to you the 5 areas of focus in M&A, and we continue to develop our pipeline. As you've seen, we've made some good progress in communicating our ESG values and as an integral part of our strategy. Pleasingly, we expect to be able to announce progress on development of the board in the coming weeks. And our strategy and focus on structural growth markets means we're very well placed to achieve our 2030 ambitions. Thank you. We're very happy to take any questions you may have now. So,
super.
Actually, John, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Gary. Thank you, Pete and John. Now, if we could turn to the questions, we do have a number of questions that were submitted ahead of the presentation. However, please do continue to submit your questions using the Q&A tab situated on the top right-hand corner of your screen. Additionally, your feedback is important to the company, so immediately after the presentation has ended, you will be redirected for the opportunity to provide feedback. As far as the questions are concerned, Pete, maybe we can just start with you. We've got a couple of questions actually which relate to FX, and I'm going to bunch them together if I can. Can you expand on the impacts of foreign exchange movements on your results? But more specifically, Sat also asked, if the pound rises to $1.40 to the pound next year, how will that impact the business? Maybe you can just address that in sort of slightly broad terms.
Yeah, of course I can. So we naturally hedge our dollar purchases. So we match our dollar purchases. Most of our materials, in fact, virtually all of our materials are dollar denominated, be that sales or semiconductors. So we matched our dollar purchases with dollar sales. So we get a revenue inflation when the dollar goes in our favor, but actually it doesn't change our profit. So our profit stays the same because that is the bit that's hedged. So our margin percentage this year, if I use this year as an example, faced a headwind, but our revenue saw a tailwind. So we saw that extra 9 million of revenue that we had this year. So, and you asked also about what happens if the dollar goes to 140. We do now have a translational effect because we have a much larger US dollar asset base, having completed the acquisition of Custom Power. So obviously those US dollar assets would be divided by the 140 rather than the 120. So we would see a reduction in our net assets. And you can see that would come through the reserves, the statement of other comprehensive income, and through the struggle. So you'll end up with net assets going down through our FX reserve. And this year we had a 900,000 reduction in net assets on that bridge. In the past, that's always been a very, very small number, but now we've got more US dollar assets. We will have a larger translational balance sheet impact.
Great. Okay. Gary, if we can probably address this next one to you. So the two questions actually, and they interrelate. What are your next priorities in internationalizing the group? And Colin also asked a question which might interrelate here in respect of M&A. What size of acquisition is now considered too small? I don't know if you can play those two together.
Okay, yeah, happy to do that. Next priorities, we've obviously clearly made acquisition in USA, which we're very pleased with. We will continue to look at M&A in the USA, but we're turning our attentions to the EU now. We'll have a similar process. As I said in the presentation, we researched 47 businesses before we acquired Custom Power, but we'll have an equally rigorous search process, which is ongoing, and assisted by the joining of Sharon Minhas, who's joined us as M&A analyst. So we'll do that, and we'll work through a pipeline there. But the two focus areas are currently in the EU and the USA. On M&A, too small. We don't have a rigid policy here. I think the important thing is what the company will bring to us in the way of complementary products or to enhance own brands, which are the two areas I focused on in the presentation. I would say typically around 10 million pounds would be a minimum, but if we find something that is a good fit, we will go below that if we feel there's long-term benefit to the company. So clearly, if you get down to sort of 2 or 3 million pounds, it starts to become much more marginal given the size of the revenues increase. But I think the best thing point to get over here is there's not a rigid policy. It's very much on what the business will bring to us in the longer term.
Right, super. Got a number of questions from Joseph, and we may not be able to address them all, but we will try and pick some out there. The first one, and I guess this may be a question that you might address, John. Are you seeing any hints of pricing pressure either in the distribution or manufacturing segments of your business?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. So throughout the last 2 years, certainly we've seen upward pricing pressure. The shortages have led to some fairly significant increases in the raw material cost, the semiconductor cost. That has slowed dramatically now. Prices are not falling, with one or two notable exceptions, but they're not arenas in which we play. They're commodity arenas, DRAM, for example. But the good news is that despite that pricing pressure, we were able to pass all of that on to our customer base. The buyers were certainly in receive mode over the last 2 years, primarily because they needed product. Other pricing pressures, some have actually fallen. So we had reached the point where we were paying $22,000 to bring in a container from the Far East, whereas a typical price would have been about, well, anywhere from $1,800 to $2,200 3 years ago. And those prices are now falling back to more normalized levels. So yes, there has been pricing pressure. We've passed it on, and there are other areas of business where pricing is falling.
Okay, super. Thank you. There are a number of questions here which relate to the EPS targets and what your assumptions are behind those. What kind of organic sales growth are you assuming to get EPS to double over the next 5 years? Pete, maybe that's one for you.
Yeah, no, that's fine, Tom. So I think, yeah, in terms of organic sales growth, to date, we've achieved just shy of double-digit organic sales growth over the last 5 years. Our strategy is a combination of organic and acquisitive growth, and that's what we've done over the last 5 years. That's worked reasonably well for us, should I say. I'm pretty pleased with the results. So, as Gary said, we're not going to change the strategy. So the plan is a combination of organic and acquisitive growth. I think we can certainly maintain what we've achieved over the last 5 years to replicate the successes we've had to date. And in terms of the TSR objectives, I think at the minute, most stocks on the market are relatively depressed in their rating relative to when the market is a little more bullish. I think we're potentially better off than some, but I certainly think, as the markets return to slightly brighter times, there's some opportunity there as well, I hope.
Great. Thank you. One for you, Gary, maybe. Coming back to slide 7, the investment case, what was the catalyst for what looks like a much better performance and setting of targets in 2017? Did something cultural or in management attitudes change?
I think it was a combination of we strengthened our team. We had more input there, but we undertook a sort of fundamental review of our strategy. We probably spent, myself, John, and when Pete joined, and Matthew, the executive team of the group, we spent probably together almost a year discussing strategy and honing it, and worked very hard on a robust but simple strategy that we could communicate to the teams, and that's really shone through. And I think having done that, and I think especially communication across the company has been very important. But I think it was that fundamental review of strategy 5 or so years ago that's really been the catalyst to that, and we're still seeing the benefits of that today. The scale that the company is beginning to have now will mean we can focus harder on all 4 of those pillars to deliver further growth to the group. But I think that strategy and still very much holds today.
Great, super. Quick dividend question. I'm surprised the final dividend didn't grow a little faster after such a good year. What was the thought process behind this?
Shall I grab that first off, Gary, and you can chip in? We have a mixed portfolio of investors, and we also took on quite a significant amount of debt with the acquisition of Custom Power. As we go forward, we've got a stated policy of progressive dividend, but I think it's fair to say if we look back 3 or 4 years, the dividend progress, there were some quite big step ups a couple of years ago. As we go forward, I think it will continue to be progressive, but probably not at the rate you saw back then. because we see opportunities to drive growth through investment in the likes of custom power and other opportunities that we're targeting.
I think over a 2-year period, there was about a 25% growth in dividends. So if you look at over a 3 or 4 year period, it's still a good dividend yield. But Neil, good dividend payment. But yeah, we're sort of mindful. We want to keep it progressive, but we have investments to make in the business as we grow. But we're proud of our track record. We paid a dividend every single year since we joined AIM in 1997.
Super, thank you. John, maybe a quick one for you. And there's a specific question and possibly an ability to broaden it out very slightly. The question is, of the components you source for clients, how many of these are you the exclusive distributor for? But also, I don't know whether you could just add a little bit more around supply chain, because it's been such a topical issue.
So of the franchised customer supply base, it's hard for me to give you a percentage number. I would say the majority of the lines that we carry, there are competitors, and there are some that we have exclusively. We have Knight Electronics, Ryan Fans, and several others that are exclusive. But I think what's fundamentally important is to understand how these larger franchises operate. So whilst we don't have them exclusively, we are what they call a demand creation distributor. That means we go out, our engineers go out, they work with the engineers in the customers' premises, and we get that product designed in. Once we've designed that product in, the suppliers, the franchises, protect us. So what they do is they give us a margin advantage, or one way or another stop competitors going into those accounts. So even though we're not exclusive, we do get a significant advantage, which enables us to take that business and really rewards the designing effort and the demand creation that we've done. Just expanding on to Tom's question, which I think was about supply chain and supply chain easing. It's a mixed bag. Supply chain definitely is easing. We need to really understand the nuances of this, because there's been a lot of investment in semiconductor production. We hear about it all the time. 59 billion in the United States, TSMC building new facilities and expanding their existing facilities. But the critical piece of information that's always missing is that those are all leading edge, high-end facilities. And leading edge is anything that has a line width of less than 45 nanometers. So it could be 45 nanometers down to 2 nanometers. And those are products which are typically found in your laptops and iPhones and so on. They typically are commodity products. At the other end of the scale, above 45 nanometer, there's been no investment at all. People don't want to invest in those older geometries. However, a vast majority of the UK customer base, the European customer base in the industrial sector use these larger geometries. So we're still seeing lead times on those larger geometries out to, well, a year in some cases, sometimes even longer. So sub 45 nanometer, standard lead times now 16 to 30 weeks. Greater than 45 nanometer, still extended. And we expect that to continue probably for another 18 months. And it will really only ease as customers start to put new designs through on the newer geometries, and that'll free up a bit of capacity in those older geometry lines. So a mixed bag.
Great, super, thank you. Gary, one you might just focus on very quickly. You've always talked about solid state being experts in the areas where your end user customer is not the expert. Quick question here, what proportion of the customer's end cost do your products make up, i.e. are you 1%, 5% or 10% or more of their bill of materials?
That's very hard to say. I'd say it's much more the 1 to 5. I mean, good examples would be we do imaging and computing products for Transport for London. So the new Piccadilly line upgrade, we're putting in computing and imaging products into that for Mind the Gap on some of those lines. And you think of the cost of a tube train versus our computer systems, it's proportionally much lower. So whether it be that, or other applications similar. We're a much smaller part of it, but it allows us to focus on what we're good at, and our customers to focus on their core competencies, and we become an extension of their engineering team effectively, and we get a lot of repeat business that way. And a lot of those customers, like we showed on a slide earlier on customers, have been customers for a very long time, but there are always new ones joining either through acquisition or through our business development programs. But typically, I'd say it's less than that 10% that was referenced, probably more the 1 to 5.
Great, super, thank you. John, a quick one for you. This is on stocking and destocking. How much visibility do you have around the potential of destocking impacting the components division?
Yeah, that's a good question. So what I can tell you we're seeing is a shortening of order book from customers. So during the shortages, we were encouraging customers to give very long order cover so that we could get that order cover placed on our manufacturers. So we were typically out at least 18 months, in some cases over 2 years with orders. There's a natural shortening of that now as customers are starting to see that there is some easing in the marketplace. We typically have order cover now up to, or seeing new orders coming in with a standard 12-month lead time. That's a fairly typical order scheduled out over the 12 months. Difficult to say how much stock customers have got. We're certainly not seeing cancellations. We're still seeing billings going out at a high rate, so none of that's being impacted. We've had 1 or 2 customers who've pushed shipments out to a later date. That is because they're burning off stock of their own. But again, these are small compared to our overall business. So it's not a dramatic effect, but certainly there are customers who are carrying stock.
Great, super. Right, and we're coming up to the hour, so last question, if I can put to you, please, Gary. Can you speak to the client demand? Is it lumpy, hard to predict, or fairly regular? Can you talk a little bit about the length of the operating cycle and how this will develop as the company moves into more complex projects?
I think one of the real benefits of having the structure we have of a components division and a systems division is typically our system division is a lumpier cycle, more project based. That's less so in the franchise component side of the components business, but they help smooth each other out. I think they're real, that's really additive, having that combination of cycles through the business. I think the operating cycles will get longer. We're beginning to see and working on projects that are larger on a system side of the business. It's a lot of investment in that, but those programs will be very long lasting, and I think that would be great for the business. But the great benefit of the structure of the group is we have that great combination of shorter design cycle programs in parts of components. They also have longer ones too, in the special projects division and other parts of the business. The value added side, that's longer, but it's that great combination of both through components and systems.
Great, okay, and something has just popped in which I think wraps up very nicely. What are you most excited about in terms of opportunities for Solid State over the next 12 to 18 months?
I'm excited about all of it. I think we've got great markets we operate in. We've told you about those. So yeah, there's very good demand creation going on right across the group with our team. So yeah, we're very pleased and look forward to the coming year.
Good, great, okay. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you for updating investors today. Could I ask investors not to close this session, as you'll now be automatically redirected for the opportunity to provide feedback. If anyone has further questions or would like additional information on Solid State, please do get in contact via solidstate@walbrookpr.com. Many thanks for attending today's presentation, and we look forward to updating again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks all.